Hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar demo of ShareAspace Cloud. My name is Clyde Druzin and I'll be your moderator. I work in the marketing team here at Eurostep and I'm delighted to be hosting this session. I'm pleased to introduce today's speakers, Magnus Vanland, our Director of Software Products, who was responsible for the team defining, designing, and developing the PLM collaboration platform ShareAspace, and Matthias Gustafsson, our Product Communication Team Manager, responsible for the packaging and documentation of ShareAspace. Today, they are going to demonstrate how the build-to-print process during design to manufacturing works on the ShareAspace Cloud platform and show you some of the modules we have available. Before I hand the mic over first to Magnus, I have a few housekeeping items to cover about this webinar. First, today's webinar will be available on demand after the live session and is accessible through the same link you're using now. Also, we'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. So if you have questions for our speakers, please feel free to send it through the question tab on the right of your screen. We'll be answering questions at the end of the presentation during our Q&A. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming our Director of Software Products, Magnus Vanland. Magnus, over to you.
Thanks, Nikolai. On October 22nd this year, we launched our cloud offering of ShareAspace. This was captured in a webinar that we held together with SimData. During that session, we walked through, on a very high level, the process we support, the general problems we solve with our solution, and the background to why Eurostep decided to launch ShareAspace as a cloud platform. If you're interested in this, the webinar is still available on our website, and you find the link to it on shareaspace.com/news. I think that's the easiest way. All you need to do is register with your email, and you get a link to where you can watch it. So it's the same process as signing up for this webinar. However, during that session, and as a follow-up afterwards, we got a lot of requests to run a more in-depth demonstration of our solution, something we actually didn't do back then. And that's why we're here right now. With a great deal of help from my colleague Matthias Gustafsson, we will try to give you a glimpse on how ShareAspace Cloud looks like and what we support in this service. So let's just dive right into the demonstration. But before running the demonstrations in the user interface, I will give you just a setup of our demonstration, so a brief overview of what we're trying to show here. So in this demonstration, our company, in this case Eurostep, is a supplier to a major OEM in the aerospace industry. Sounds almost correct. We're supplying landing gears to some of the OEM's aircraft models. And recently, they received a new order for the OEM's latest model. Eurostep is doing most of the designs themselves, but outsource a lot of the manufacturing to smaller specialized suppliers. Eurostep has contacted one of the suppliers, Wheel Experts, to help them manufacture the wheel carrier. And they have a signed contract and NDA. Our major OEM in this case, the aircraft manufacturer, have quite high demands on the full product being documented and well traced in what has been manufactured. And that's one of the requirements put on Eurostep as a small supplier. For this collaboration, and for the collaboration with all the suppliers, Eurostep decided to choose ShareAspace and ShareAspace Cloud as the platform. So with all collaboration projects, of course, this involves establishing a collaboration, working together, executing the collaboration, and then eventually closing down, of course. But before we go into the details of the process that we support, I will hand over to Matthias to just show you the user interface of ShareAspace and what that looks like.
So we will start this demonstration with a short introduction to the ShareAspace user interface and kind of what you get when you sign up for a ShareAspace subscription in the cloud. So what we'll start with is that I will sign on with my user account, which is the account that actually paid for the subscription of ShareAspace. The first thing we can see is that when we sign on for the first time to a newly set up ShareAspace instance, we get some notification from our onboarding system that prompts us and asks us whether we want to see an initial user interface guide. This onboarding system can also be used later on in the process if you have a question or if there's some part of the process that you need help with. The onboarding system can guide you through the user interface. Here we see an example of me updating my user profile for ShareAspace. Another thing that we can see is that when we have subscribed to ShareAspace in the cloud, we actually gain access to two spaces, one called test and one called production. So the test space has a more limited license than the actual production space, but it allows you to test out the application and do trainings, test out data loads, or what have you. We're navigating into the production space, and we're greeted with the kind of space start page. Here we can see that we have a set of tiles. These represent different modules doing different things within the application. We also have on the right hand side a new section, and we also can have access to data or objects that we marked as favorites. In the top right corner, we also gain access to a menu that will show all the modules that we have access to in our current role. It could be so that you don't want to keep all these quick links on your space start page. Navigating into a module, in this case we pick the parts module. We can see that we have already loaded some data into this space. We can see that we have the main landing gear loaded, and we have the metadata around this landing gear. We can see that we have some lightweight 3D files. We have the original CAD files. So many modules are built up like this, where you have the possibility to query for information or search for information using the left-hand side, and where you will be presented with the result of your searches in kind of the main pane, and selecting objects will show some detailed information about these objects in the right-hand side pane. It is also possible to open up certain entities like these parts. I can open them up in other modules. So for instance, in this example, I will open the main landing gear in the what we call the structure module. From within the structure module, I can navigate the assembly structure of the landing gear. And I also have the possibility to manually within the user interface editing the structure or editing the information objects that we manage in the ShareAspace user interface.
Matthias, great. So that gave us a brief overview of how the user interface looks like. Let's dive into the actual process that we support. So basically what we've seen now is a ShareAspace that has already been set up. And in order to continue our process, we need to invite a partner. Actually, I think you actually already invited a couple of partners, but not the one that we have right now. Is that correct, Matthias?
Correct.
Yeah. So what are the challenges there with inviting partners or setting up quickly a collaboration space? Well, first of all, what we've learned is that we want to minimize the required IT setup because it involves quite a lot of administration, setting up accounts, etc. So we would like to have an easy way of doing that. And of course, when you invite the partners, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to see everything. So you need somewhere to divide that. First of all, in ShareAspace Cloud, I should mention that sharing intellectual property is typically a business-to-business relationship because we're sharing IP sensitive data between companies and not persons. So we're actually inviting companies rather than persons. But of course, there has to be one representative to begin with at that company. And also, when you invite the partner, it doesn't necessarily mean that they see everything. We still need to actively share information with them, and we come back to that later in the process. But Matthias, if you can continue with the process.
So the next step in our demonstration is to invite the Wheel Experts partner. So this can be done by the project administrator on the OEM side. So in this case, I'm opening the partners module, and we can see that I already have 3 partners registered within the space. Both from within this module, I'll go ahead and register the Wheel Experts partner, and I'm inviting the partner administrator to that partner. In this case is John, Wheel Expert. Once the partner has been invited, the invited partner administrator will receive an email from ShareAspace saying that you have been invited to this ShareAspace space, and you're currently the partner administrator, in this case at the Wheel Experts participant. Once the user receives this email, he is able to register with a user account with ShareAspace. And in this case, he was using Gmail, so he can actually sign on using his Gmail account. And this is very important that you sign up for ShareAspace with the email that you were actually invited with. The first time you sign up for a ShareAspace account, you need to fill out some information, where you're coming from, and you also need to accept the terms of use. And once you have accepted these terms, you have a registered ShareAspace account, and now you can use this account within any space that you're invited to. Once you've gone through the registration process, we can see that John Wheel Experts, he is coming into the exact same space that I was showing earlier in the introduction. From within this user interface, he can invite his colleagues that needs to take part in this collaboration. And he can use that. He can do that by using the user module. What we can also see is that if I, as John the Wheel Expert, enters the parts module, there is no information that he actually has access to yet, because we haven't shared any information with the partner. Just as any user within ShareAspace, also the partners can of course use the onboarding system and get help in certain processes.
So partner has been invited, but nothing has been shared yet. The challenge of sharing data, if we compare this to actually sending files back and forth through emails, which is a very simple thing, it's extremely hard to keep track of that. So we've introduced something we call a work package. Package is a way to collect everything that should be shared with your partners, things like who the partner is, of course, the contracts, other descriptive documents, and of course the technical information like bill of materials, parts, documentation, etc. And what you can do with this is then you can easily share it, unshare it, and then you get a full audit trail of what's been shared. So Matthias.
Next step in the demonstration is that as the OEM, or as your step, I now want to share information with the Wheel Experts. So in order to share information with them, we have something called a work package. We can see here that already in this space there is a set of work packages, some that are new, some that are ongoing, and some that has already been completed. So this is all work together with the other partners that are invited. But I'll go ahead and create a new work package. So I will be sharing information from Eurostep to the Wheel Experts. And I also need to then specify what is it that I want to be sharing. And I want them to be working on the wheel carrier. So I'm saying that putting the wheel carrier inside the work package. I'm also linking to our contracts, our signed NDAs. We also have a purchase order in here that we link in so that the partner, once this package is shared, can have the full view of of the information that he or she might need in order to do their work. So we can see that in the package we have the wheel carrier, and the package has not yet been shared. So we'll go ahead and share the package with the partner. And once this is done, all this information should now be available to the Wheel Experts partner, and they should be able to review and accept this work package. So signing on as the partner user, we're entering into the production space, and now the partner has access to information in ShareAspace. So for example, he can see that there's new work package shared with him, but he can only see that work package was actually shared with him. He can go and have a look at this information, so he can have a look at the non-disclosure agreement that was signed. We also have the actual signed document shared with him, and you can use the file preview function in ShareAspace to preview files right from the user interface. We can also see that we've shared a purchase order with this work package. So the purchase order is stating that we want the partner to manufacture 4 wheel carriers, and that we want them to also report back the information about wheel carriers when they deliver them. So we also want a data delivery with the final delivery. He can also go ahead and have a look at the actual design data that's been shared with him. So he has access to the wheel carrier and its assembly structure. One thing that we can note here is that in the kind of sharing contract, we've set it up so that we are only sharing the lightweight information about these parts, so not the original CAD files. This is of course up to you how and what you want to be sharing, but in this example we're only sharing the lightweight information. Finally, what's expected from the partner is then to review this package and go in and acknowledge that we've received the package and we accept the content of the package. It is of course possible for them to go through a process of maybe requesting more information, and there are different ways in ShareAspace on how you can do this. Either in a very informal way with just comments on the package itself or using message threads, but it could also be a more formal process where you might want to start registering problem reports on the content of the package.
All right, great. That sounded really simple. Is it as simple?
Simple, yes.
Great. However, what we've learned over the past 20 years, at least, that I've been working with this, is that it's fairly easy to share and upload the first batch. Same goes with uploading things to a database, I think. But it's when you start changing stuff that the problem starts occurring. So typically in collaborations with partners, you get changes proposed by the partners. You get changes that was decided by the OEM to be implemented with all the partners, or there can be shortage of the agreed components that will result in changes in production or manufacturing. So with ShareAspace, you can upload change data. You can change the data in the user interface if you want to, but you can also upload the delta, if you can extract that from your source system, or you can extract a full set with the changed and upload that, and ShareAspace will pick it up, the changes. We also give you a full track record of what has been changed and what has been changed after you accepted and reviewed the data. So Matthias will now go in and show how we handle changed data.
In this example, we can see that a set of change notices have been imported into the system, and they've been automatically shared with the Wheel Expert partner because these particular change notices did actually affect one of the work packages that was shared with them. So ShareAspace will identify this when change notices are imported into the system, and it will also make sure to automatically share this information with the partner. The partner can see that in this case that one of the change notices was actually a response to the earlier created problem report, but then there's also happened other changes that they need to be aware of. They can of course go in and look at the change notices, read their descriptions and their specification of what have they done. Like in this case, it's about replacing parts within the wheel carrier assembly. What we can also see is that the change notices have been connected to the work package automatically by the system because these change notices are actually affecting this particular work package. It's now up to the partner to review these changes and also acknowledge that they've received them or comment on them if there are some issues with these changes. Maybe they are not able to manufacture based on these new specifications. But in order to do this, they might want to compare the information, the latest information, with the information they actually accepted from the beginning. So instead of having to go through each change notice one by one, they can use a module called Change Impact. And within the Change Impact module, they can look at the current specifications, the current assembly structure of the wheel carrier, and they can compare the structure with the structure as it looked like when they first accepted the work package. In this case, we can see that 4 parts have been removed and 4 new parts have been added into the structure. We can also see that 2 of the parts that were replaced were these 2 O-rings that the partner already had issues with and thus created a problem report.
All right. That was data being changed, and we could view that online in the user interface. But what happens if you need to work with the data offline then? And that's often the case with our suppliers, that they have systems on their own that they want to use fine granular and digital data with. In ShareAspace, you can easily download a work package on demand. That means that you get a report of the latest data, and we can actually even manage and give you all the changes. So in that report that you get, you see all the changes that occurred as well. You can download this in a visual format, HTML, and Matthias will show that soon, or in a machine-readable format like STEP or XML that you can use for your own systems, of course. And all the files that are attached and available to you can also be downloaded into a complete package. So if we show that.
So in this example, the partner wants to download this work package that has been shared with them. So in order to do that, they enter a module called Data Exchange, where they schedule something that we call an export job. So what they will do is that they will run an export of a work package. So they use the form here to find the work package that they want to export. And finally, they specify the output file name and the output folder. So as we can see, the user is using the files module in ShareAspace to specify the output of this export. Once everything is specified, they schedule the actual export job, and it will execute for a few seconds. Once the export is finished, the user will go to the files module, where they will find this whole exported package. And from here, they have the ability to download a zip package of all the meta information, as well as all the files connected to any of the parts or documents. So if we look at the zip package by extracting it, we can see that we have two HTML reports in here, and we'll have a look at one of those. And it's the structure report. So it's reporting the exact same information they've seen in the ShareAspace user interface, but in a bit different view. So here they see the full assembly structure. They also see all the change notices that have come into the system. And they also have the ability to look at the actual files connected to any of these parts of documents. So here we have some asymmetric view of the wheel carrier, and we also have some lightweight JT files, which they now have offline, which they can bring it into 3D viewer, for instance.
All right. So now we have shown how we upload data, how we share data, how we change the data, how we download the data. But after running production or during running production, it would be really nice to get data back from the suppliers as well, because that's one of the things that we lack in our communication. So production or manufacturing is seldom really straightforward. So how do I know what is actually produced? I would like to get some feedback on what has been produced and also details on the produced material. So with the ShareAspace Cloud, you can actually capture feedback on what has been produced, typically certificates, test protocols, or other things related to those serial numbered parts, the specification that they were produced on, if there's been any changes, because then you don't know which version, for instance. And of course, if there's been any deviations or concessions during the production. So, over to you, Matthias.
Once the partner has manufactured the wheel carriers, if you remember from the purchase order, it's also stated that the OEM expected to get data back. So they want the serial numbers of the produced wheel carriers. So in order to do this, there's something called a delivery record within ShareAspace, where the partner could either use the ShareAspace user interface to just manually go and register a delivery record that has a reference to a set of serialized physical items. So you have the serial numbers, and you can also refer to the actual specifications from which they were made. So either they do this process manually, and they use the user interface for that, or they can decide to actually import this information into ShareAspace. So in order to import data into ShareAspace, which each space configuration you get an Excel template that can be used for automating or loading larger set of data in one go. Here we see an example of an Excel spreadsheet for physical items, so the serialized assets that they're going to report back. And the Excel spreadsheet also contains the metadata required in order to instantiate the actual delivery record. And it also has a reference to the work package for which the delivery record is valid. So in order to import this, the partner will use the data exchange module again. They will schedule a new job, and this time they will pick a job called the soft type Excel import. When scheduling this job, they'll upload the Excel spreadsheet that contains the serial numbered assets, and they schedule an import. Once the data has been imported, we should have the delivery record registered with all the serialized assets. And here we can see that there's one delivery record and 4 physical items that's been added to the space with this import. If we go and have a look at the details of those serialized assets, we can also see that these are actually referring to the actual specification that was shared with the partner from the beginning. As the last step in this demonstration, we will look inside ShareAspace from the OEM side. Again, they can be notified that a delivery record has been created. In this case, they can go and see that a delivery record has been created against this work package, the 1020. in that delivery record, they can also see the reference to the serialized assets that were loaded into the system. Since all this looks good, we can consider the work package completed. The work has been done. We have delivered against the work package. And here the OEM also has the possibility to actually unshare the data. So from this stage, if you decide to do it like this, the partner will no longer have access to any of the data that was previously shared with them.
All right. Thanks, Matthias. Great show. I hope you a little bit of insight on how ShareAspace works. And since we've used up our 30 minutes that we said, I think now is a good time for those of you who want to stay put to take some questions that appeared during this session.
Yes, thank you, Magnus. Thank you, Matthias, for the presentation. I think it was very insightful for everyone. So we'll move on to the Q&A. So if you have any question, please ask them. We already have here a question. Somebody's asking, what cloud service are you using?
Maybe I can answer that. We are using Microsoft's Azure cloud for our cloud service, yes.
Mm-hmm. Here's another one. You show the work package referring to a purchase order. That data is in our ERP system. Can you integrate with ERP?
I guess I can take that one. So for our enterprise offering within the cloud, we can help up in setting up custom integrations with ERP systems hosted both on-prem and in the cloud. You could, of course, also yourself set up imports and exports where you take care of the translation from your import and export formats to and from ShareAspace. But we're also looking into having more standard connectors for ERP systems offered through the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matthias. Here we have another question. Is this part data stored in a ShareAspace database, or is it real-time data pulled from an external system? I think it's for you, Magnus.
Oh, yes, it's stored in the ShareAspace database. So each space has its own database, and we integrate other systems and pull data into that space. Yes.
Thank you. Here's another question. Can we have many products in one space?
Yes, of course. Most companies share components between different products, and that then makes sense to have them all in one ShareAspace. And then you can share the common parts when you share with other partners.
All right, and we'll take one more question. What about security? Is it secure?
Yes, I would say it's very secure. So first of all, ShareAspace has its own security mechanisms, and they're built into the core of the platform itself. So it controls who has access to information and when they should have access to that information. So all the information that's stored in ShareAspace is actually owned by one of these participants that we saw, and from there is where you start sharing the information or defining what you want to share and what level of access you want to give. When communicating with ShareAspace, all the communications are done in an encrypted manner, so that's also secure. And for managing user accounts, we're using Microsoft's Azure Business to Consumer Active Directory, which allows us to also integrate with external identity providers, like you saw in the demonstration where the John Wheel expert user could bring his own identity from Google and sign on to the system.
All right, great. Thank you very much for attending, everybody. Please, you can visit sharespace.com to learn more or contact us. Please let us know if you have any other questions. We will answer them later. Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, Magnus. Have a good evening.